Who invented butter? What if I told you that one of humanity's oldest foods was probably invented completely by accident? Not by a king, not by a scientist, not by a famous inventor, but by a traveler riding across a hot, dusty landscape thousands of years ago. Today, butter is everywhere. We spread it on bread, melt it over vegetables, bake it into cakes, and use it in countless recipes. It's so common that most people never stop to ask the simple question, who invented butter? After all, butter doesn't grow on trees. It doesn't come out of the ground. Someone had to discover it. But the truth is far stranger than you might imagine. To understand the invention of butter, we need to travel back more than 5,000 years, to a world without supermarkets, refrigerators, or even written history in many places. Back then, milk was incredibly valuable. For early herders, animals like sheep, goats, and cattle weren't just sources of meat. They provided something even more important, a renewable supply of food. But milk had one major problem. It spoiled quickly. In the scorching heat of the ancient world, fresh milk could turn sour within hours. For early humans, finding a way to preserve it wasn't just convenient, it was essential for survival. And that's where a remarkable accident may have occurred. Many historians believe that ancient travelers carried milk in bags made from animal skins, hanging from horses, donkeys, or camels during long journeys. Imagine what happened next. Hour after hour, every step of the animal shook the milk. The hot sun warmed the bag while the liquid sloshed back and forth again and again. Eventually, something extraordinary happened. The fat inside the milk began separating from the liquid. Small clumps formed, grew larger, and finally, butter was born. No laboratory. No recipe. No grand invention. Just milk, motion, and time. If this theory is correct, then one of humanity's most beloved foods was discovered completely by accident, thousands of years before anyone understood the science behind it. And once people realized what had happened, they quickly discovered something even more important. Butter lasted longer than milk, was easier to transport, and contained valuable calories. In a world where food shortages were common, that made it incredibly valuable. What began as a curious accident was about to become one of the most important foods in human history. But who were the first people to make butter intentionally? And how do we know butter existed thousands of years ago? The answer lies buried in ancient artifacts, hidden beneath the sands of time. For centuries, people believed the true inventor of butter would remain a mystery. And in one sense, they were right. No single person can claim the invention of butter. It happened so long ago that no names were ever recorded. But archaeology has uncovered enough clues to tell us who the earliest butter makers probably were. One of the oldest pieces of evidence comes from around 2500 BC. Inside ancient Mesopotamia, the land between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers. Archaeologists discovered stone carvings showing people churning milk in large containers suspended by ropes. They would swing the containers back and forth over and over again, separating the fat from the liquid, just as people had likely discovered by accident centuries earlier. Around the same time, similar techniques appeared across Central Asia, the Middle East, and parts of Europe. It wasn't one civilization inventing butter overnight. It was an idea spreading wherever people raised dairy animals. Different animals produced different kinds of butter. In colder regions, people mostly used cow's milk. In dry grasslands, goat's milk was more common. Across the high mountains of Asia, yak butter became an essential food, rich in energy and perfectly suited for harsh climates. The methods were different, but the goal was always the same: turn fragile milk into food that could last. Soon, butter became much more than something people ate. In ancient Egypt, it was offered to the gods during religious ceremonies. In parts of India, butter, and especially clarified butter known as ghee, became sacred. It was burned in temples, used in rituals, and mentioned in some of the oldest religious texts ever written. To many ancient cultures, butter wasn't just food. It represented life, prosperity, and survival. But nowhere did butter become more important than in the cold lands of northern Europe. There, long winters made farming difficult, fresh food was scarce, and every calorie mattered. Butter wasn't a luxury, it was a necessity. Families stored it through the winter, cooked with it every day, and relied on it when other foods ran out. By now, butter had traveled thousands of kilometers from its earliest beginnings. But its greatest influence was still yet to come. Because in medieval Europe, this simple golden food would become so valuable that people paid taxes with it, traded it like currency, and even started arguments with the church over who was allowed to eat it. By the Middle Ages, butter was no longer just a way to preserve milk. It had become a symbol of wealth, trade, and power. Across northern Europe, butter was produced in enormous quantities. Farmers churned it by hand, packed it into wooden barrels, and shipped it across kingdoms. In places like Ireland, Denmark, and the Netherlands, butter became one of the region's most valuable exports. But there was one problem: butter spoiled. Without refrigeration, it could quickly turn rancid. So people invented clever ways to preserve it. They salted it heavily, sealed it inside wooden casks, and sometimes even buried barrels in cool peat bogs, where the cold, oxygen-poor environment helped keep it edible for months, or even years. In fact, archaeologists have discovered enormous lumps of bog butter, hidden underground in Ireland and Scotland. Some are over 1,000 years old, while others date back nearly 2,000 years. These strange discoveries reveal just how valuable butter once was. It wasn't thrown away, it was protected like treasure. Butter even found its way into politics and religion. During the Middle Ages, many Christians were forbidden to eat butter during Lent, because it was considered a rich dairy product. But in Northern Europe, where olive oil was rare and expensive, avoiding butter was incredibly difficult. So churches began allowing people to pay a special fee for permission to eat butter during religious fasts. Yes, people once paid the church for the right to eat butter. Some historians believe these payments became so profitable that they helped fund the construction of several churches and cathedrals across Europe. By then, butter had become far more than food. It connected farmers, merchants, kings, and even religious leaders. What had started as an accidental discovery thousands of years earlier had quietly become one of civilization's most important everyday products. But butter's story wasn't over. The biggest transformation was still to come. A revolution in technology would take butter from small village kitchens to factory production, and eventually, to almost every dining table on Earth. Everything changed in the 19th century. For thousands of years, making butter had been slow and exhausting. Families churned cream by hand, sometimes for hours, producing only small amounts at a time. Then came the Industrial Revolution. Mechanical churns transformed butter production. What once took an entire morning could now be done in a fraction of the time. As railroads expanded and refrigeration improved, butter could be transported across countries without spoiling. For the first time in history, ordinary families could buy fresh butter almost anywhere. Demand exploded. Soon, butter became a global staple. From the croissants of France and the buttered toast of Britain to India's fragrant ghee and countless traditional dishes around the world, nearly every culture found its own unique way to use it. Then came an unexpected challenge. In the late 1800s, a cheaper alternative appeared: margarine. Many believed it would replace butter forever. For decades, the two competed on supermarket shelves. Yet despite changing trends, butter never disappeared. Why? Because nothing else tastes quite the same. Today, scientists understand exactly what those ancient travelers could never have explained. Butter forms when tiny fat globules inside cream are broken apart through constant churning. They stick together, separating from the liquid to create the rich, creamy food we know today. The process sounds simple. But imagine discovering it without chemistry, without machines, or without even knowing what fat was. That's exactly what makes butter one of humanity's greatest accidental discoveries. So, who invented butter? The honest answer is no one knows. There was no single inventor. No famous king. No forgotten genius. Butter was likely discovered independently by early herding communities thousands of years ago, as they carried milk across long journeys and accidentally churned it into something entirely new. It was perfected by countless generations of farmers, shared across continents, and passed from one civilization to another. Sometimes, history isn't changed by a brilliant invention. Sometimes, it's changed by a happy accident. A leather bag. A long journey. A little milk. And thousands of years later, that simple accident still sits on breakfast tables all around the world. So the next time you spread butter on a piece of warm toast, remember, you're tasting a discovery that has traveled through more than 5,000 years of human history. Because some of the greatest inventions were never invented at all. They were simply discovered.